Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about all the books I've read in the first half of March. And welcome back. I'm so happy you decided to click on this video. Today I'm going to talk about all of the books that I read in March so far. So today is March 16th as I'm filming this, and I've already read 11 books. So I didn't want to overwhelm myself trying to do like a huge wrap up at the end of the month. I was like, we're going to be kind to yourself and just gonna do half of it now because that would end up being such a long video that nobody would watch. So this is my goal here, is to have people watching. So let's get started. The first book that I read this month was Valley of the Dolls, and that was actually me finishing it. I started it at the end of February. I know I've talked about this book over and over again, but I did finish it in the month of March and I loved it. It was so interesting to see how different things are today from the way they were during this book's timeline, which is the late 40s to like the 60s, I believe. And it was really just a pretty good and entertaining read. It was funny to me, some of the things that were absolutely scandalous, like just general homosexuality. Some of the language was just bizarre to me in 2023, the words that just get thrown around, but I did really like this. I mean, definitely have to see it as entertainment and not like great work of literature, but I had a good time reading it. I think at the end of the day, I gave that 4 stars. It was just a little lengthy and, you know, these shallow, vapid people making terrible decisions, which is usually something that I love, but was a lot of that. The next book that I read is Someone Else's Life by Lynn Liao Butler. This was a book that I wasn't blown away by. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. This is about a woman who has kind of had her whole life fall apart, more or less. Like money problems, her dance studio that she owned closed, her son was in a terrible accident, has like PTSD, and so her and her family moved to Hawaii, and they, you know, are just trying to have like peace and kind of start over fresh there. But one day, right before this like huge storm is coming, a woman comes up to her door and says like, my car broke down, I don't have anywhere to go, and I'm really nervous to drive during this huge storm. Can you help me? So she lets her in like a dum-dum, and then she finds out, wait, is she really a stranger or is she coming to me specifically? She lives in the guest house at this point, like of her dad's house, and her sister and her wife, I think, live there. I don't know. But this whole book takes place in the guest house. And it's kind of weird to me because like it keeps feeling like she can't get help because they're in the main house, but it's like, how far could it possibly be? Even in a big storm, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you could make it in order to like save yourself, but also don't let people into your house you don't know. And I don't want to sound like I'm heartless and like I wouldn't want to help someone, but like, I don't know. Gotta think of yourself first, especially because she has a kid. He wasn't in the house. He was in the main house at this point. So I don't know, this probably doesn't make sense, but I thought that this character just made frustrating decisions, so it was kind of hard for me to like really be into it. And like I said, I think I gave this 3 stars. The next book I read, I don't have a physical copy of, but that is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. This was fantastic. I know she wrote another book called The Great Believers that's like super popular. I think it won like a National Book Award or maybe was a finalist. I don't know. Got a lot of hype. So I do want to read that now. This one is brand new, and I listened to the audio, which I loved. Julia Whalen was the narrator, so like the queen of audiobooks. Love it. This is about a woman named Bodhi who is a podcaster, and she goes back to the boarding school she went to growing up and is teaching a class on podcasting. And each student has to like kind of pick their own subject, and one of her students picks this murder that happened while she was at the school who actually happened to be her roommate. So it kind of starts digging up some of the past, and it's just really cool the way it all unfolds. I mean, this is a long book, but I was not uninterested at any point. You get a lot of past timeline and you get some of present, and you learn about like her own problems at home with her kids and her husband. And yeah, it was just, I really enjoyed it. It definitely held my attention. And I don't know why, but like I just love, you know, when there's a podcast element to things. And yeah, something pretty big that I probably should have mentioned earlier was that there's a man in prison for this murder who has always claimed innocence, and a lot of people don't think that he did it. So that kind of becomes the central of her students' podcast, is kind of like reopening the case and trying to like get him free. So very good book. I gave this 5 stars and really enjoyed it. The next book that I read is The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. I did talk about this one in my previous reading vlog, but I'll give a little more background. It's basically the Great British Bake Off, but in Vermont or New Hampshire. It's in New England. And somebody ends up dying. So it's all like who done it. But really, it's only towards the end of the book. The first like 75% is basically like getting to know the characters and their backgrounds and like some of the baking. The murder of the murder mystery doesn't happen until like there's probably like 100, maybe less than 100 pages left. So I don't know. It was like, I had a fun time reading it, but I don't think this is like groundbreaking or anything. I mean, I did enjoy it, but it's definitely not one I think I'll pick up again. However, I mentioned in my vlog as well that I feel like the ending is set up for a sequel that I probably will read, because this was a fun, like, easy read. Just kind of one of the cozy mysteries. I don't know. I had a nice time reading it, but it was just nothing like super memorable. I probably couldn't tell you a single character's name at this point, and I read it like a week ago, so. Another one I will probably not talk about too much to bore you with again, but Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. I just adored this. It was so sweet, so fun, about the twins that catch on fire and this kind of down on her luck woman who goes to be their caretaker. And it was just like so sweet and fun, and I love like a band of misfits kind of finding each other. It was so cute. It follows, like I said, a woman whose ex-roommate from boarding school, another boarding school book, has asked her to come take care of these kids that are her stepchildren because she doesn't want to do it, and she like knows she will do it for the money, and there just is such a sweet bond between them, and it was just perfect. I loved it. Highly recommend. Again, same situation. I Will Find You by Harlan Coben. This was a 5-star, like 4.75. I just didn't like one little thread of what happened at the end, but this was about a man who was wrongfully convicted of murdering his son, and when he's in prison, his former sister-in-law, basically presents him with proof that his son is actually still alive, and so he like masterminds this plan to break out of prison and like find the truth. It was really good. There was a really interesting and fun like jailbreak kind of vibe, but then also like, wait, what the hell? This kid's alive. We literally had his body. How is this happening? So I thought this was really unique, really clever, and again, like I really enjoyed it. I definitely recommend watching my last vlog where I'm reading 5-star predictions, because I think that I talk about this in a lot greater detail and a lot more eloquently. Definitely check that out if you want to know more about this book. The last one from that video is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. Just so great. Really interesting look inside of the mortuary funeral business, and there was a lot of really good commentary on death and how we perceive it, and like, does it have to be sad and ugly and scary? I mean, I really thought this was super insightful, and I loved her stories. I suppose, again, should probably clarify what this is about. It's a memoir from a woman who worked in a mortuary, and she's a mortician, so that's her job now. But it was kind of like how she got into it, how, you know, why would anybody want to do this job? And like, yeah, I really thought this was cool. A really unique perspective and just a lot of insight into what we think of death and how like Western society has made death into something that it doesn't need to be. We should be able to like die gracefully, and like embalming and all of that, that's relatively new concept, and is it necessary? Death shouldn't be scary, and dead bodies shouldn't be scary, and I learned a lot, and I really recommend this one. Next, I read The Favor by Adele Griffin. This was from NetGalley, and I really liked it. So one woman, Nora, is working in a vintage clothes store, like think high-end designer vintage. Like this is just a passion of hers, like hunting down like really cool vintage stuff, vintage clothing items and accessories. And one day this woman named Evelyn comes into the store and is just buying everything, and she's having such a fun time, and they become good friends. Now at the same time, Nora has been trying for a baby with her husband for a long time, and they've basically wiped out all their savings, and they just think that it probably isn't going to happen for them. They had done everything, IUI, IVF, and nothing has worked. They have one fertilized egg left, and then that would be like their last shot to have a baby biologically. After Evelyn and Nora get really close, Evelyn says, "I'm going to be your surrogate." And then it kind of just shows their relationship and how their relationship changes, especially with like sort of a power dynamic with Evelyn carrying her child, but also having so much money, and Nora feeling really vulnerable to the fact that like, I don't want to say anything to make Evelyn mad at all because she's got my baby, and just not being in a situation to be able to do this on her own. Evelyn's like paying for everything. And so, you know, I could just totally feel how Nora's like, I have this opportunity and this person in front of me who's willing to give me this gift, and I don't know how to deal with it. So this was really good. I thought it was going to be like a thriller, and I really don't know why, because it's definitely not. It's, I don't know, women's fiction, even though I hate that term, kind of. Just fiction is fine. Yeah, I really liked it. It doesn't come out, I think, till June, but it was a good one for sure. Next, I read None of This Would Have Happened If Prince Were Alive by Carolyn Prusa. This was not a fave for me. I was entertained by it, but a lot of stuff just kind of annoyed me about it. So this is about a woman who lives in Savannah. She has two kids, Alex and Nanette, and they are little, I think 5 and 3, and one day she comes home with them a little early from work and finds her husband sleeping with another mom from their school, so that's not good. At the same time, they're trying to prepare for Hurricane Matthew, and she's got like her mom who refuses to evacuate, and then this neighbor boy who doesn't really have anyone taking care of him. He's like 16. So she's like, you gotta come evacuate with us. I'm not leaving you here. So it was good. It was fine. It was just a little frustrating. I grew up and spent most of my life living on the coast of Florida in Sarasota. Well, that's where I grew up, but I lived in Miami for a long time. I lived in Orlando, which isn't coastal, but still in Florida. And so I feel like I'm pretty well versed in like hurricane prep and when to like take it seriously. And I was just kind of frustrated because there's a point where the main character takes her kids to her friend's house in Augusta, Georgia, which is much further inland and, you know, would be getting like heavy rain and probably nothing else. So she takes them there, but then finds out that her mother is not evacuating. Like she is still in her house on the coast. She like literally lives on the beach or on an island or something. And then she takes her kids and drives them back out there to rescue her mom. And like, I get it, I do. But like, she's a grown woman, and if she made this choice, why are you going to go put your children in jeopardy by driving back there? I just feel like maybe this was a personal thing for me because I do know so much about like hurricane prep, and like if they're ordering you mandatory evacuations, like you should do it. I know that people joke about like Floridians being so like whatever about hurricanes, but we also have pretty good judgment for when it needs to be taken seriously. So that really drove me crazy. I also, the title of this book would lead you to believe that there is a lot of stuff about Prince in here, but like there really isn't, like, at all. I mean, she does talk about him and like where was she when this song played, but she kind of like only talks about like big hits, which a Prince superfan would feel like not do, kind of would want to brag about the deep cuts. And it's just not that relevant to the book. Anything to do with Prince. It just feels like it's just thrown in there. So it almost feels like maybe she like came up with the title of this book and then decided, what should I make it about now? So I don't know. I mean, it was fine. I think I gave it 3 stars, probably like 2.5 really, but it's nothing that you should be going out to get right now, but like, I've read worse. Okay, another one that I was excited to read is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So this doesn't come out, I think, until May, but I was excited to read it. Riley Sager is one of these authors that I have read all of his books, and I think I've liked 3. So like, why I keep picking them up, I don't know. Like, I truly don't know. So many of them I've like actively disliked. So I just keep doing it though, for some reason. But I'm happy to say I did like this one a lot more than his last 2, which were The House Across the Lake and Survive the Night. My all-time favorite is Lock Every Door, but this kind of gave me similar vibes, only in the like, somebody disappeared and the new person replacing them has to like figure out what's going on. But it had similar sort of vibes to it. This is set in 1983, and it follows a woman named Kit who is an in-home caregiver. So she's recently been suspended from her job because she basically gave a patient access to their medication that they could overdose on, and so her patient died. She's been suspended, and she's about to come back to work, and her boss sends her out to Lenora Hope, who is an infamous, like, Lizzie Borden type. It's like she murdered her sister, her mom, and her dad in like 1929, right before the crash. So this is like why it just ended up being very like regional news as opposed to national or international. And so she's now like in her 70s and she needs a caretaker. She's had several strokes, so she can't speak or move anything except her left hand. Kit doesn't really want to take this job, but she's like, I have to have a job. I have to. So she goes to it, and it's just very creepy because it's all in this like old mansion where these murders took place. And Lenora, despite being, immobile and without being able to talk, she's like, you're a murderer. How am I in your house? Like, I don't want to do this. So I thought this was a really interesting concept. I have always been kind of fascinated by like the Lizzie Borden story. There was like a Lifetime movie about it not too long ago that I really liked. And it's just interesting, when you go down those serial killer rabbit holes on Wikipedia, she's one I've stumbled on many, many times. And there's similarly like a little rhyme that like kids would say in school, like, the Lizzie Borden took an axe, whatever. There's one in here about this lady. So yeah, I thought this was much better than his last 2. It wasn't like my favorite thing ever, but a very big improvement. This definitely veers a little more towards horror and its creepiness as opposed to like super thriller, but I thought it was pretty good. And I think that people who didn't like his last 2 books, like me, will enjoy this and will be able to see that like, okay, maybe he got the memo that we hated those 2. I don't know. This was good. I really liked it. Definitely recommend it when it comes out. Okay, the last book I read is probably my favorite of the month. I actually just finished this last night, so it was like my last read of the first half of March. And that is Drowning by TJ Newman. If this cover looks familiar, it's because she wrote a book 2 years ago called Falling. It's one of my all-time favorite thrillers, and this is actually got nothing to do with it, except it does have to do with an airplane, which I always love because I work on airplanes. I'm just gonna read the back because I think that's a really just like cool summary. 6 minutes after Flight 1421 takes off, it crashes into the ocean. The passengers who survive the crash think it's a miracle. They believe they're the lucky ones. Then the plane begins to sink to the ocean floor. The survivors are trapped inside. Against all odds, a massive rescue operation is launched to save them. There's not much time. There's even less air. So this was high stress, high tension, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. This seems kind of like Falling if you just look at the cover and like think about the concept, I guess, like, oh, okay, like people on a plane have to get out of a disastrous situation and is anyone going to rescue them? But this is so much different. This does have like a lot of science in it just about how this rescue would possibly even be able to happen, because they're trapped in a plane, in the fuselage of a plane, like 200 feet down, and somehow they can still like breathe and stuff. It's wild, super wild. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It's way more emotional than I remember getting with Falling. There's also, like I said, there's a lot of kind of science-y talk, but it reminded me a lot of Andy Weir's books, Blake Crouch, stuff where there's like a lot of science-y talk, but like you can still understand it if you just, don't try to understand it, just accept it and like keep reading. That's definitely what I had to do, because some of it I was just like, I cannot visualize what they're talking about doing. So keep that in mind. Don't let that deter you. It has no impact on the story if that stuff goes over your head like it does for me. This doesn't come out until May 30th, but I loved it. I am so excited for this to get out into the world and for everyone to read it. I learned a lot too in this one about like kind of how rescue efforts go. And, you know, people are always like, why do you like to read books about like plane crashes when that's your job? Are you not like scared? But I feel like now I'm very prepared if I ever am in a plane crash that has to be a ditching, which I don't know if that's a word people know that aren't in aviation. A ditching is just landing in the water where you have to ditch the aircraft essentially. But if I'm ever in a ditching, I feel like I know more about how to get out of it. This was just 5 stars, and I definitely think this is going to be on like my favorite books of the year. It's early, but I thought it was that good. I don't think I would really call this a thriller exactly. It's more just like suspense. There's a lot of emotion in it too at certain points. So definitely get your hands on this. Pre-order this. It's perfect. I loved it. Yes, 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 yes. So those are the 11 books I've read at this point in the month. I am hoping to maybe read another 11 books by the time the end of the month comes. Who knows? But that would be really cool. I'm currently on track for my book challenge, my Goodreads challenge, that I've read 40 books so far out of 200. That is my goal. So that's cool. I was kind of off track for a little bit, but now I'm back on track. February was kind of a slow month, so I feel like I'm making up for it in March. So yeah, excited. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Let me know if any of these are on your TBR, or just let me know how your reading is going for this month. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.